It's certainly an unfortunate part of my job, but so often I see tenants just completely taken advantage of in their rental situations, in my travels, in selling real estate. And not only that, I see landlords get taken advantage of by tenants in my travels as well. The Residential Tenancy Act has been created to help protect both landlords and tenants, and sometimes it might sway in favor more for one than it does the other. But that's not what today's video is about. Today's video is about what I wish both landlords and tenants knew before they got into a tenancy. Whatever you think you know, you've probably got it wrong because you're probably not paying attention to all the changes, especially the changes that have happened in the last couple years. In this two-part series, we're going to do two videos, and one video is going to be all about you, the tenant, and what I wish you knew before you got into a tenancy and during your tenancy. This is designed to help you from getting taken advantage of or making some missteps that will end up being mistakes that you will pay for. Now, if you're a landlord, I don't want to forget about you either. I want to make sure this is equal for both tenants and for landlords. And the ultimate result of this is to make sure that both parties get fair treatment and they know the rules of the game. So if you're a landlord, watch today's video, but also keep a lookout for the second part of this series because I'm going to let you in on some things that you definitely need to know when you're a landlord renting out your property to potential tenants. For today's video though, if you're a tenant, you're going to come away from this video armed with some information that you probably didn't know that's going to help you in your tenancy both before, during, and after. I'm going to let you know what to do if you run into challenges with your landlord and how to handle disputes, and best of yet, this is really just going to make your life a lot easier. And make sure you hang around to the end too, because if you are a tenant, well, you're probably going to become a home buyer at some point, and you probably want to do that sooner than later. I'm going to let you know how you can get access to our course for BC homebuyers, anybody in the province of British Columbia, to buy their first property, and I'm going to let you know how you can get it for free. If all of that sounds good, let's jump into it right now. All right, so here's the deal. They are always getting it wrong. Who's they? Well, they is landlords and they are tenants. You know, the BC government, they see landlords as somebody that's in a business relationship with a tenant that is renting out a property to them. And they expect both parties to know the rules of the game. Being oblivious to the rules of the game is not a solution when you encounter problems. I never want to see another tenant get taken advantage of when I'm selling a home that has a suite in it and a potential buyer is going to do something that's really kind of unfair for the client. I never want to help somebody find a rental property or buy into a rental property and have all these issues created because they did not understand the rules of the game when they should have. As I was preparing for this video, I wrote down a bunch of things that I just really wish tenants knew before, during, and after for their tenancies. And it was a long list. I'm looking at it right here. These are all ideas that I had that I was so excited to share with you, but there's a lot. So rather than get into complete detail with all of these ideas, I'm going to do them very fast form. By doing it this way, that makes sure that you get the information that I want to make sure that you get. And if you have any questions on this information, I will leave a link below in the description to the government's website where you can get more detail on these, or you can hit me up in the comments below and ask away. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Starting with the before phase, it's important to know that tenancies do not need to be in writing to be binding. Now, of course, they should be in writing because it helps each party understand their rights and obligations and responsibilities to the other party. However, the lack of having a tenancy agreement in writing doesn't mean that that tenancy is not subject to the rules and regulations of the Residential Tenancy Act. When you're getting into a tenancy, you are going to want to make sure that you sign two documents. And those two documents are, of course, your written tenancy agreement, as well as an additional document called a condition inspection report. The importance of a condition inspection report is to make sure that you document the condition of the unit when you moved in, so the landlord can't go after you for damages that were already occurring or have happened inside the unit that you are renting. A little tip is lack of a condition inspection report really negates any ability by the landlord to try and collect damage money for damage to the property by you later on. This is the only official report of the condition of the property, so you're going to want to make sure that you fill it out. Now that you're into your tenancy, it's important to talk about rent increases. And rent increases can only happen based on the government mandated amounts. Your landlord is only able to increase the amount each year by what the government sets. And in fact, in 2023, that amount was 2%. You don't want to be caught agreeing to or assuming you have to agree to a higher rental amount when that's really not allowed to be done. Not only that, but your landlord must provide you with 3 full months of notice prior to that rental increase taking into effect. The landlord also owes you something called quiet enjoyment of your property. And what does that mean? Well, they do have the right to come back and inspect the property periodically to make sure you're taking care of it, and that's fair. However, they're not allowed to really go outside those boundaries. The definition of quiet enjoyment is pretty clear. Every tenant has the right to reasonable privacy, freedom from unreasonable disturbance, exclusive possession of the rental unit, subject only to the landlord's right to enter the rental unit in accordance with the laws, and the use of common areas. Quiet enjoyment also means that you have a right to have guests over, to cook the food that you want to eat, practice your religion, play music in the home that you're in, and all of the other services and facilities as is described in your tenancy agreement. Where I see a lot of the confusion between tenants and landlords is when it comes time to ask a tenant to move out. And this is where I want you to pay very, very close attention to some of the things that I'm going to mention. First of all, if you're a tenant and you're actually giving notice to your landlord, well, you owe them 1 full month of notice. This means if you were to provide them with notice on the 15th of the month, you still need to give them a full month. That means it's roughly 45 days until your tenancy ends and you're responsible for rental payments up until the very last day. But maybe you're not planning on leaving. Maybe you signed something like a 1-year lease and your intention is to stay. It is important to know that leases do not automatically renew. So a 1-year lease does not automatically renew into another 1-year lease. In fact, that 1-year lease automatically will turn into a month-to-month tenancy. So if you're scared or afraid of being asked to leave your rental unit, I would suggest to your landlord that you are interested in signing a new lease for another period of, in this example, for 1 year. Otherwise, you stand the chance of being asked to move out if the landlord was ever to sell the unit or want to occupy the unit or renovate the unit. That brings us to the reasons that you can be asked to leave. Now, this is one of the biggest things that I see people get wrong, and both landlords and tenants alike completely misunderstand this. You cannot be asked to vacate a unit for any reason other than 2. The first reason is the landlord wants to use the property or they've sold the home to somebody who plans to use it for their own personal residence, for their own personal purposes. Now, regardless of what that person, whether it's your current landlord or a potential home buyer, wants to do in that home, they cannot rent that property out for a minimum of 6 months from the date that you move out of it. They could leave it vacant, they could move their grandparents in, they can really do anything like that, but they cannot re-rent the unit. And what's great about this is that means they can't force you to improve or increase your rent and kind of threaten you to put somebody else in there for a higher amount. Now, the second way to ask a tenant to vacate is for renovation. And if you live in British Columbia, you've heard the term renoviction. You've heard it a lot, especially if you're a tenant. Let's better understand exactly how a renoviction takes place. And essentially what a renoviction has to be is a renovation that is so significant that somebody could not live in the property while it was taking place. A bad example of this is painting or changing the floors. That is not so disturbing to renovate when you're painting or doing the floors that somebody would actually have to move out of the unit. The BC government addressed this problem recently because they realized that you as a tenant and even landlords, they probably don't understand what their rights and responsibilities are for renovictions. So for a landlord to actually give you notice for a renoviction, they have to apply to the residential tenancy branch and get permission describing the types of renovations they intend to do. Pending they get that permission, they now have to give you 4 full months of notice to vacate the unit. 4 full months. And in the last example, if they want to own or occupy or have sold the home to somebody that wants to occupy it, they have to give you 2 full months of notice. So you're never going to have the rug pulled out from underneath you and have to get out of the unit right away. But what happens when a landlord does it for reasons that aren't maybe above board? They tell you they're going to renovate the unit, or they tell you that a buyer has purchased it and is going to be moving in, or just generally you find out that the unit was re-rented for a higher amount just after you moved out. We got a problem. Did you have any idea that you can apply to the residential tenancy branch against your landlord, and effectively you can go after them for 12 times the monthly rent if you are evicted for the wrong reasons, or the landlord does not follow through with the reasons that you were evicted for? That's a huge bonus for a tenant that has moved illegally, and something you need to pay attention to when you're evicted from a unit, because it's not fair to you to be evicted for the wrong reasons. So there's a pretty substantial penalty there for a landlord if they don't know the rules of the game and they do it illegally. Since we've been on the topic of selling, it's important for you as a tenant to understand your rights and responsibilities as a tenant when a property is being sold. And I find a lot of tenants really don't quite understand this. Let's be clear. As a tenant, you cannot restrict access to your unit for your landlord or for your landlord's realtor. This is, of course, assuming that appropriate 24-hour written notice has been given to you. If you restrict access to your unit, or you interfere with the sale in any way, and that could be as easy as saying things that are untrue or generally interfering with the realtor trying to tour a buyer through the home, making comments about the home that aren't true, or just really trying to put some detrimental spin onto the sale, you could be asked to leave and given 1 month notice for cause. So this is something you don't want to get involved with. The realtor that's selling the home, they've got some responsibilities to you as well. They're responsible for your possessions, as an example. They're responsible to give you appropriate notice to show the home. And you even have the right as a tenant to ask that your personal possessions aren't in any of the photography of the property. If you ever find yourself in the situation where you are the tenant of a property that's being sold, you want to jump onto the residential tenancy website and understand what you can and cannot do, because it's really important. And the last one that I want to share with you, which makes it such an awkward experience for all tenants involved, is your tenancy is going to end on the last day of the month at 1 p.m. So what's the problem with that? Well, your new tenancy probably doesn't start until the following day, the beginning of the month. So you need to be prepared that you're going to probably be without a home and have some storage needs for roughly about 24 hours. And don't forget, if you are moving out, you actually have a responsibility to clean the unit, unless there's something otherwise provided in your tenancy agreement that's not the case. But you also have a responsibility to actually shampoo or steam clean the carpets if you've been there for a period of at least 1 year. And look, I would hate for you to be surprised and get a bill that you weren't prepared for. So what does one do if they find themselves in dispute with their landlord about anything related to their tenancy? The answer is really simple, and it's to jump on to the BC government's Residential Tenancy website and start getting more information. Everybody that is involved in the tenancy, landlord and tenant, is responsible, as I mentioned, for knowing the rules of the game, and they make dispute resolution quite simple at the Residential Tenancy branch. There's tons of resources on there, FAQs, calculators, all the sort of stuff you're going to need to help you identify who's in the right, who's in the wrong, and you've got professional arbitration if you can't agree. This video today was not meant to be an exhaustive list on all of the things you need to know going into a tenancy or during a tenancy, but it's some things that I see all the time that people absolutely get wrong. Hopefully you learned something, but if you want to learn even more, I'm guessing if you are a renter, you probably don't want to be a renter forever. And for that very reason, we created something called the BC Home Buyers Course. This course is a do at your own pace, from the comfort of your own home type course that has over 3 hours of video content, downloadable PDFs, and questions to help put you in a better place, so when you are prepared to buy your first home or your next home, you know everything you need to know going into it. For a very limited time, if you check out in the description below, we've included a link where you can access this course material for free. Normally, we charge $89 for anyone that's signing up for it, but because we're so passionate about making sure that people like you that are currently renting properties have a better financial future, we've made this available for free for the remainder of 2023. Look, I want to thank you for watching today's video, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are. You can share horror stories about tenancies. You can share anything that you think might be useful to either landlords or tenants in the comments below, and I'll always make sure to get back to you and answer you. Lastly, we work really hard on these videos to bring you incredible content all the time. So please do us a favor, like the video, subscribe, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks for watching.